Hi, Shekhar.
Hi, David. Good to see you after some time.
No bugs last night.
Absolutely none.
You had a good sleep. So we are going to have a little conversation with Shekhar, and this time I guess we will sit and talk, Chief. So tell us a little bit, Shekhar. How does it feel to come back? After how long are you back in
Well,
Delhi?
I'm in Shillong now after 2 years. 2 years back, I had come when we held kind of an event at Nehu. Uh,
I remember that. Yes.
we go to campuses in good times. Good times means when there was no COVID. And once a month, in some campus in some part of the country, we hold a show called Democracy Wall.
Okay.
And democracy wall, as you know, the metaphor is about letting people express themselves even in a tough time. Because democracy wall is something that came up after the Cultural Revolution in China.
Okay.
Because suddenly one day outside Chungnan High, which is like the Red Square area, uh, people just wrote their views on posters on a wall. So
Okay.
that was writings on the wall. So democracy wall is how we started this. So we were here 2 years back, and I've come here once every couple of years or so, but very briefly each time.
I know because way back in the 80s, you were very, very closely associated to the region.
Well, I think very early in the 80s,
Yeah.
81 to 83, I don't think anybody in this crowd was born then. I hope your parents were born then. So 1981 to 83, we were here. I was then covering the Northeast for the Indian Express. And Shillong then, it was not the de jure capital of the Northeast, but for all practical purposes, it was still the capital of the Northeast. And frankly, Meghalaya was the only peaceful state in the Northeast at that point because Naga, Manipuri, Mizo insurgencies were on, Tripura had a lot of disturbances, and Assam had its agitation, and oil was blockaded. I mean, it was that complete. So Shillong was a little oasis of calm from where you could work.
Yeah, it used to be referred to as a patch of beauty.
That's
But
right.
coming to days of now, what is the Shillong that you read about, that you hear about, and
Well, even when I was here, people used to complain. My friends in Shillong used to complain, and my Meghalayan friends used to complain that I spent 3 years here and never wrote very much about Meghalaya. But I used to tell them, isn't that a good thing? Because most of the stories we wrote about in those days were bad news stories. They were not good news
absolutely?
stories. So no news means good news. That was one way of looking at it. Uh, but the other way is that sometimes, I can see it better having lived here for some time. There in Delhi, it's very easy to be out of sight, out of mind.
Absolutely.
And all capital cities have that temperament. All capital cities think that life begins with me, life ends with me. Uh, there is a there is a
What did you sit down?
there is a very good book by an American author. I forget his first name, but Leibovich is the second name, called This Town. And that book talks about how does Washington work, or what is
Ah,
called as Washington within the Beltway. So what is Washington within the Beltway is also Delhi, which is Lutyens Delhi. So Lutyens Delhi very easily forgets anything which is not top of its mind. And sometimes that's good, but oftentimes, it's not very good. Particularly if you're a very small state, it's not very good because then you begin to be taken for granted.
so Shekhar, see, now you're mostly in Delhi. Your life basically revolves upon in Lutyens, Delhi. During your time and maybe till the early 2000s, there were a lot of other senior journalists from the region or from other parts of the country who focused a lot on the Northeast. We had you, we had Deepak Diwan, there was Kalyan. Unfortunately, he passed away. Have you all who have experienced, the Northeast at very close quarters and know the pulse for what it is? Have you all been able to at least make an impact or in the line of thinking, like, for us not to be so out of sight all the time?
Well, some of us tried and some of us keep trying. But what has not helped very much is the change in the emphasis of the national news media from print and more more detailed stuff to TV, and TV needs a situation on the ground. TV needs a situation on the ground, preferably somebody dying because somebody being born is no news. And TV needs to be able to shove a microphone in somebody's mouth or maybe a camera. So too much of the media resources have shifted to TV. And what's happened with TV channels is that they're all cutting corners. They don't want to spend money on correspondents because most TV correspondents don't have that much to do because all they have to do is what we might call aankho dekha hal, right? Live commentary. So that you can have a stringer with a handheld camera or maybe just a phone
A
these days,
smartphone, yeah.
can file clips. So TV journalism has redefined journalism not in a good way, and I don't see it judgmentally. There are good TV channels and not very good TV channels, and how good channel is or how good a publication is depends on the taste of the consumer. But TV journalism by itself is not patient. Uh, so if you're covering a complex, layered region like the Northeast, then you need a little patience. You need to be able to explain. If I have to explain, for example, and I was thinking of how to do it today, maybe it's today's Cut the Clutter, on what's happened in Meghalaya politics, basically the Congress. So I have to first explain to people that Mukul Sangma is a Garo leader. Congress has been very strong among the Garos. That among the Khasis, the regional parties over time have disintegrated APHLC and HSPDP. I don't think most people in the rest of the country even know those
know.
parties. Uh, I'm not even sure everybody here knows because all these are very young people. Who knows Mr. Hopingstone Lingdo? I don't know anymore. Uh, so you need to do what is called as Tanpura setting in classical music. You need throat clearing. And TV has no patience for throat clearing. So I have to say Vincent Pala is a Khasi, the Congress High Command sent him as the head. I don't know the last time a Khasi headed the Congress in the Northeast. In the past, it was like a partnership or it was like a division between Bibi Lingdo on one side and the Sangmas on the
Corners,
other,
yeah.
Williamson Sangma and then Purno.
Purno.
So these things are difficult to explain on TV. I think by the time you come this far, people would have switched on,
Yeah.
gone to something else.
So do you feel that the advent of TV, the entrance of broadcast journalism, is in a way negating exposure of the region, or do you feel that there's still that lackadaisical attitude in Delhi that TK, whatever, like you just said, some when it's bad news, then you rush for it, but if there's something positive or something that which has a human
See,
touch.
so there is something that a friend of mine in Meghalaya said when I was here. In fact, I've quoted this in a column. And he said, so how many Indians do we have to kill for you to get a front page byline in the Indian Express? I used to work for the Indian Express then. So that problem is there. I would not say TV by itself. Who's performing?
When today,
Although music is at Polo Ground.
music is in there. This is the only for the lit thing.
What's your next session in the lit thing?
There's going to be a. They even made a mistake with the timing. Kanpam, he writes poetry. He's in Nehu. He's a lecturer.
Obviously. Okay, now. Okay, all right. So repeat your question.
I said, do you feel that the advent of broadcast media is actually taking away that
No, look,
interest? And
broadcast media itself is very good. It's not bad, and not bad at all. Look at Al Jazeera. Look at BBC. They are teaching us what we don't know about the Middle East, for example.
True.
We would not have known what happened with ISIS, Syria. Most people in India would not have known what Syria is, where Syria is, uh, or who Yazidis are. So TV is a force for the good. It's just that the way TV economics is now settled in India, uh, because consumers are not paying for the content they are getting. Consumers think that they should get the content for free. So some advertiser or some sponsor has to pay, and they go by purely the logic of numbers. And numbers, then that's why you have these TV channels. I don't know if you have them here or not, but you have TV channels in Hindi which have stories about snakes marrying trees, right? Now, a snake marrying a tree is a fun story, right? But it's not journalism.
True.
So it's entertainment. It's getting mixed like that.
It's more infotainment
and
souped
and
up
that
with.
and that's where I wrote in one article that in the rest of the country, what mistakenly is called mainland, because everything is mainland. This is mainland. Uh, we only seem to get bothered about the northeast when we think it's a threat to us. We don't see the Northeast as an opportunity. We are not interested. We get interested when we see a threat, when we see something odd happening in Nagaland, or an ambush in Manipur, or disturbances of the kind that you had here on August 15. Oh, separatism! Then everybody wakes up. But if we were awake at other points of time and people felt more involved, then maybe these threats will not arise. But at the same time, I have to say the good thing is that a lot more young people from the Northeast are working in the rest of the country. So a lot more Indians in the plains, let me say, put it that way, are getting acquainted with people who come from the Northeast.
And how do you find the young people, the resource that is going out
They're,
from here
they're,
in journalism, in
No,
literature,
they
in
are they are brilliant. They are brilliant. They are very good. They are ambitious. They want to prove themselves, and there are areas where they have skills that are not found elsewhere. Music, for example, uh, and also because there is a lot of racism, and they've been unfortunately victims of a lot of racism in the rest of the country. The good thing now is, and again, you have to thank the media, particularly TV media in this case, that there is much greater awareness that this racism is a cheap thing. It is not something that should be done, and that's how these incidents are highlighted, and lots of people get punished also. So it's a work in progress. It's not a done deal, but I would say that the movement is towards the better.
and in terms of attention towards the region, do you feel that we've had the Look East policy, then the Act East policy now? What East policy do you possibly think can come up? Have they actually been fruitful or at least shown semblance of fruit?
Well, I think everybody talks of a look east policy, but how much look east do we do? Because we somehow seem to think in Delhi, and that's our political training also, because our politics is so focused towards Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran, Middle East. So our politics temperamentally is focused westwards, not eastwards. And we fail to realize that the east is also very complicated. Now, for the east to have, I know that these highways are called Asian Highway 1, but how far is it reaching unless Myanmar is settled?
Yes, true.
Unless you find a modus vivendi around Myanmar. Uh, so Myanmar is an issue. Similarly, India's relationship with Bangladesh has been up and down in the past. Right now, it's in a very good place. But at a time when our relationship with Bangladesh has been in such a good place, we unrolled this monstrosity of CAA plus NRC. Because the moment you say CAA plus NRC and you say that Bangladeshis are termites, we'll throw them in the Indian Ocean, and then you again go on to refine and say who Bangladeshis are. That means only Muslim Bengalis are Bangladeshis. Hindu Bengalis are not Bangladeshis, even if they fail the citizenship test, because under CAA they will get in. So you are lighting fires in a region where you don't need to light more
It's already
fires,
volatile.
right? This region has seen its fires, so you don't need to light new ones. But that also comes from a lack of understanding of the region, because most people don't understand that Northeast is not the problem of one ethnicity. it's not as if there is one northeastern identity and one rest of India identity. The northeast itself has 100 identities. How many Naga tribes are there,
Yeah.
right? Each one has its own language, its own culture. Then they find a way of speaking in Nagamese or whatever. In Meghalaya itself,
We have many.
yeah, Meghalaya itself, different tribes are there, different tribes are different. You have clans within the tribes, you have traditional systems. Uh, if you went to even a UPSC class, right, UPSC preparation class, most people will not know. When I came here the first time, I went to see a festival, one of those traditional festivals with a little dance, and I saw the chief, the CM, Khairi CM, and I saw these people in khaki with uniform saying KSP. So I asked somebody, what is KSP? So I was told it is Khairi
And in same
CM's
shape,
police.
police.
I said, how can he have a police? Then I was told that under modern law, he also has power.
Depth actually.
No, it's not a good thing because, as he said, one second, sir. Pardon me? No, no, they'll restore the power. Let everybody hear. That's good. Okay.
Okay.
So, yeah, so the question was that is it a good thing or a bad thing that power still goes off? I think it's a bad thing because things should have become better, not worse. And see, small things make people angry and frustrated. So I'll tell you a little story, not from the Northeast, but from Allahabad.
Okay.
I mean, it's the Hindi heartland that determines who rules the country, and you know the situation in the country. And this is not today. Since 51, Hindi heartland has decided who rules the country. In fact, even yesterday, the National Family Health Survey results came out. Now the full NFHS 5 is out, and you can see the entire country is being dragged down by the Hindi heartland. And yet they have the political power. But in spite of that, so this is a story from, in fact, I posted this picture on Twitter also, of an old man sitting in his house, bare torso, in just his little dhoti tied like this, under a stationary fan, with sweat dripping all over him. And he's complaining that there is no power, it's so hot, what can you do? So I asked him, but light kab aati hai? When does power come? And he said to me in Hindi, अरे भाई बिजली का और मौत का क्या पता कब आ जाए? That electricity and death, you don't know when it will come, right? So so people get angry, and so over the years traveling across the country, I figured that all of us Indians, whether we are rich, poor, middle class, even extremely rich, uh, live a quality of life which is lower than what our income levels should be able to afford us. Because the richest person in India has to worry about power going off. The richest person in India has to worry about fire brigade not turning up in time. The richest person in India has to worry about getting a passport renewed. Increasingly, the richest person in India now has to worry about uh, investigating agency overreach, right? That's why you find after every budget, every corporate czar in India gives the finance minister 9 out of 10. 10 out of 10. In fact, given half a chance, they'll give 12 out
12
of
out
10
of 10.
also, right? Because, and once the cameras goes off, even in the studio, they tell you, Mar diya. And then you say, but why didn't you speak the truth on camera? No, 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 no. Tax people will come, ED will come, CBI will come. So we are living, we can live much better quality of life with better governance and better democracy than we do even at our current income levels.
So, so if this is your reading and how you see it, and I say perhaps you're referring to main India or heartland or whatever. So what about us then? We're
No,
obviously
look,
in
I mean,
a, in a, in
look
a
at power as a metaphor. If you look at power as a metaphor, India is surplus power.
true.
Every day on the national power exchange, there is power available, but nobody is willing to buy it because
Fine.
everybody is broke. Because we are not able to charge people, and when we charge people, people don't pay. And when people don't pay, in the course of time, some outgoing chief minister or some aspirant chief minister will waive those bills. Now look at Punjab. Punjab Congress Party is the incumbent. It's now going, its term is now ending. So Congress Party's own chief minister has said, I'm writing off all electricity bills. And in fact, he held a bonfire of electricity bills. So these are self-inflicted wounds. We have enough power right now, but people are willing to pay for power. But we are encouraging people to not pay for power. That is bad governance, and that's a bad practice of democracy. So if tomorrow somebody were to say, political class were to say, we will never waive electricity bills, or we will never waive these loans, then people will begin to comply. People are good people. People burn diesel in their homes to generate power. Why would they not pay for electricity bills?
Yeah, so somewhere down the line, there's no connect you feel when it comes to that. You're not able to reach out to them and make them understand that.
I think we are getting distracted, but I think it's voters have a transactional relationship with the politicians now, and these transactions are done for the wrong things.
Now coming back home, close to home and the region for that matter, politics and the people are two separate areas here. If you Politics here is different from other parts of the country. It plays a very key role in governance because right from the grassroots, there is a system on top of you. Do you feel that's pretty? I mean, it's bad or is it good for for
Well,
this age, this
I,
era?
I wish we could have the best of both worlds in the Northeast also, because the Northeast also had a lot of traditional democracy,
True.
a lot of traditional democracy, lot of customs. On that, that and modern law could have worked simultaneously in a manner that they complemented each other. On the other hand, now what's happening is that modern law is being forcibly supplanted on top of traditional systems and laws. And that's not quite working because one, you get this immune system reaction that my culture is being changed. Uh, on the other, people are not used to this. And then when you try and bring in this modern law and systems, then a lot of the people who are enforcing this or who are implementing this have to be outsiders. And that leads to its own tensions.
And what is your take on? You've been in close quarters with both in the world of politics as well as the top echelons of the North and South Bloc. What is the relation and how does the relation between the politician, the bureaucrat, and the people? How is it there? And do you find it a difference here because you are also following matters here quite closely?
Look, in Hindi, there is a metaphor. You ask a you ask a starving man, what is 2 plus 2? He will say 4 rotis, right? You ask a politician, what is 2 plus 2? He'll say 4 votes, right? So politicians look at votes. The Northeast does not count for that much by way of the votes. All the states of the Northeast together, say about 13 in Assam, has just about 35 or thereabout seats,
Yeah.
right? So that is less than about as many seats as the state of Madhya Pradesh. State of Madhya Pradesh has among the poorest social indicators, human development indicators in the country for any large state. That state, in that state, if a party can have a clean sweep, not once but in 2 elections, uh, how much effort will that party spend in the Northeast for just that many seats? And what happens in the Northeast is because states are small, local parties are small, uh, they tend to make deals with the dominant party in Delhi. The best example is Arunachal. Arunachal, whoever gets elected, joins the party that comes to power in Delhi. So it's like a leveraged buyout.
Hmm.
So you've seen the same gentleman being chief minister of Congress Party, chief minister of Janata Dal,
Janata Dal.
chief minister of Janata Party, chief minister of the BJP. So this is what this shows you the really weak bargaining position federally of northeastern states. And that is the reason, in fact, unfortunately, that a lot of people have taken to arms and things. So the way to handle that is to give them space where they are. And the best example of that is Mizoram. See, Laldenga, who used to call himself president of an independent government, he came over ground, and I learned this lesson in Mizoram when after the accord, the first election was taking place in Mizoram. I was then in India Today in Delhi, so I had come to Mizoram to cover the election. So I asked to be taken to meet this young woman called Banlal Zari. Banlal Zari used to be the secretary of the IG of police in Mizoram, who was assassinated in his office. So the IG of police, his DIG, and his SP special branch, they were all assassinated by Mizo guerrillas. And she was the secretary of the IG, and she was then seen to have been complicit in this. And she was tried, and she was given, I think, life imprisonment or 20 years or some sentence. But as part of the amnesty with the peace accord, she had come over ground, and she was now forgiven. So I'd gone to meet her, and she was campaigning for MNF. And I said, "You were fighting for sovereignty all this while. How do we settle with this? This is 1986." And she said, "Just to be sovereign doesn't mean that you are free." See, that was a time when Lech Wałęsa was carrying out his solidarity movement in Poland. And she said, "Look at Poland. Poland is sovereign, but is it free?" Which I thought was a very intelligent thing. I would not hear that from a Hindi heartland politician. And I thought it's a very good idea to give people space, but treat them with respect in Delhi. You can't give them space here and then say, "I'm calling you from Delhi, do this." Because the one thing I know that states of the Northeast, particularly tribal states of the Northeast, they don't like to be colonized in that sense by Delhi. And second, they dislike even more being quote unquote colonized like that from Guwahati. Now you have a bit of both, right? You have Delhi controlling all these states because everybody is part of NDA. And then you have a leader in Guwahati who's making the phone calls, so everybody
Yeah.
has to listen. So I think we are pushing at this immune system, and we are seeing those results. Unfortunate ones we've seen in Tripura, we've seen in Manipur, we've seen on Mizoram Assam border. Nagaland is just festering now. Uh, this is not good. India is an easy voluntary federal union.
Yeah, so Shekhar, then in that case, don't you see that this is really not doing the Northeast as a region any good? I mean, we are small political entities do not have any say because, like you said, they will go to the highest bidder. The perception of national parties actually just using us as spare, yeah, as a
See, that's
Stepney.
why that's why people who govern India, they have to be very large-hearted, and they have to think beyond the figure of 272. Uh, because then what happens is that a lot of your creative time is consumed in dealing with crises far away. You can avoid those crises. See, look at a state like Mizoram. Since 1985, it hasn't had a crisis. Touch wood, right? But you don't want to then say, "I'm imposing Hindi here. I'm beginning to interfere with what you eat, uh, or I have this complex CAA NRC combination whereby some people, even if they are foreigners, will be legitimized." A lot of things happen serendipitously, particularly in the Northeast. So let them happen.
And even now we have the latest controversial cattle transportation
Yes, I believe now
bill of
some new rules are being
Assam. So
written. But people have their life. Who's anybody to tell anybody you shall eat this and you shall not eat this?
that is one. Another thing is how can we change?
I mean, if somebody made it compulsory to eat cheese in this country, I leave this country. Because even at the point of a gun, I will not eat cheese.
Yeah, but then coming back to again the Northeast being looked upon as one big state and Guwahati the capital. What do you feel? How does how does the Northeast go about in actually expressing and showing its own identity and actually making things matter in Delhi? Because
Well, first of all, I would wish and hope fervently that this is not done violently. Because the moment anything like this is done violently or with a separatist impulse, then it's very easy for Delhi to put it down. Because then the power imbalance is much too much. Also, it's good for everybody to be part of a larger sovereignty. See, 60s was the most dangerous decade for India when Nagas could have broken away, Tamils could have broken away, but none of them did because they were wise people. They realized that if they broke away, they'll have a much smaller sovereignty. It's much better to be part of a larger shared sovereignty. Uh, I think some of this has begun to happen. I find a lot of the middle class elites from the Northeast coming up now. A lot of people are visible. Uh, the gentleman who gave me a pat down at Delhi airport yesterday was Erai Khan. So I said, "You are a Tankul Naga." He
Thankful.
said, "Yes." So I said, "Are you from Ukrul?" He said, "No, I am from Senapati." So I said, "How come an Ukrul comes from a district of Maos?" And he took my card, he gave me his number. He was so taken aback that somebody in Delhi could
Knows
recognize a Naga second name, a Tankul
Thankful.
second name, and could also tell him that Tankuls are from Ukrul. So we, we now, when we say we Dilliwalas in a way, are running into a lot of you, right? Even your Shillong Chamber Choir, we are running into a lot of you. Although I would hope and pray that Shillong Chamber Choir sings less of Hindi film songs, right? But they have to perform at weddings and also I know there are demands. Uh, but they are brilliant ambassadors.
You know, it's a nice
And the
afternoon.
other thing that my pet peeve when I meet young people from the Northeast and I run into them in hotels and restaurants on flights. So what's your name? Cynthia. Your name is not Cynthia. No, no, my name is Cynthia. Where are you from? I'm from Mizoram. Tell me your Mizo name. You don't want to hear it. No, no, tell me your Mizo name. My Mizo name is Lal Ram Pari. So then I tell them that it's Mizo names are so beautiful because Lal Ram Pare is a branch from the God's own tree or something
Yeah,
like that,
yeah.
right? There was a time when we thought we'll name our daughter Lal Ram Pari because I used to love that name because my daughter was born here. Then our friends from the north said, "Oh, it's okay for you to give her an exotic name here, but when you go to Delhi, then people will call her Rampyari." So, what will happen then? So I in fact proactively object to people. Don't do what the Chinese have done. The Chinese go all over the world, give themselves Christian first names because I think that makes it easier. Steve, Cynthia, Danny, so and so. I mean, if you want to preserve your identity,
Go
please
ahead.
keep your names.
True, true. And going back to old days when you were here, what are your key memories that you still cherish, or some sad ones? Do you have
Well, I mean, no, we don't. We have zero sad memories of Shillong. Uh,
the Northeast?
Northeast, yes. It's always tragic to have to count the bodies of your own compatriots. And we saw a lot of those. We saw 3,500 one morning in Delhi
Yeah,
and many
Delhi.
other places. So, and again and again, as I've reflected back, I have wondered if that was not avoidable. Almost everything that happened here was avoidable. See, what happens with Delhi is that because people have, a politician is very busy. Politicians are the most hardworking human beings. Most hardworking, the strongest, and the only ones who are held accountable because they have elections. But they are very busy. So they tend to leave distant problems, they tend to reduce them into security problems. Once they become security problems, they become problems of the Home Ministry. Once they become the problem of the Home Ministry, again it becomes a problem of the intelligence agencies. The moment a complex problem is left to intelligence agencies know operations. So I was once talking with Mr. Saifuddin Sos, who's a leading Kashmiri politician. He wrote a book, his memoir, and I was having a conversation with him on the memoir and asked him what went wrong in Kashmir. And he said what went wrong in Kashmir was that since 1947, Delhi outsourced the management of Kashmir to intelligence agencies. And intelligence agencies have been running intelligence operations. You find wherever a political approach has been followed, results have been good. In Assam also, after all these years of Samdam, Dand, Bhed, intelligence operations, finally Rajiv Gandhi signed that accord. As a result of that accord, Congress party got defeated. Uh, Assam Gun Parishad came to power. At least that bitterness was buried. And then Assam Gun Parishad destroyed itself, and finally all of its people have come to the BJP. But that's politics. So I think politics, democracy is the way for these things to settle. But
And
you should allow politics to play out. You should not try to manipulate politics from Delhi or Guwahati or anywhere.
no, but then don't you think that coalition politics, which Meghalaya is the author of, that in itself is also a major hindrance to things going forward?
Well, that's not correct. The history of Indian politics tells you that India overall has grown much better under coalition governments. Because in a coalition government, first of all, dictatorial tendencies are kept in check. Misuse of power doesn't take place. And also, everybody has to give and take all the time. How do marriages survive? How do families survive? Growing up children, how do you survive? Because you're constantly indulging in give and take. Okay, you want to watch 6 movies in a month? No, no, you will watch 3. Okay, I'll settle for 4, right? So when you have a coalition, then you learn to trade spaces. When you don't have a coalition, you see no need to trade spaces.
Shekhar, when you wrote the book Assam way back in '84, um, that was from your experiences and at that time. Do you think Assam is still in that at that
No, Assam
or
had
after the accord everything?
Assam had left all of that behind. Assam had moved on. Uh, Look at how many Assamese people are doing well across the country. Assamese are the stars in the country, including of Republic TV, right? The the man who gets all of India triggered in the evening, right, is from Assam. So Assam is now not a state. Assam punches way above its weight. So Assam gained a lot with Assam Accord, and by putting that demon behind it, I think the CAA NRC that started in Assam, and Supreme Court is guilty there. And I'm not saying anything new. I've written this. I live a little bit dangerously. They reopened a wound that had been closed because you know that there is nobody that you can push into Bangladesh. Not only is Bangladesh your only ally in the neighborhood, uh, Bangladesh today has higher per capita income than India. So even to say that Bangladeshis are leaving their country to come into India is nonsense. Third, Bangladesh is a very powerful country. Uh, and fourth, if you really pushed Bangladesh to an extent where Sheikh Hasina lost power, what will happen in Bangladesh? You will have a Bengali speaking Pakistan to your east. Does India really want it? Who in India wants it? So that fire was lit unthinkingly and for no reason. Some people might have lit it thinking that they will benefit from it in Bengal elections. It didn't happen.
Didn't happen.
People are not stupid. And I think some people might have lit it not understanding the complexities of the situation. Now, like any good surgeon does, but a good surgeon has to have humility that you open up a patient and you find the tumor so complicated that I can't deal with it. So stitch it back on and wish the patient the best and say, I hope your immune system will deal with it. And our country's immune system is very strong. So this Assam NRC CA business is a patient that has to be stitched back in. Otherwise, this will burn all of India. In fact, I had at that point written that they are lighting a fire in the northeast that doesn't know the difference between Hindu and Muslim, because in 1983 elections I've seen mobs that were shouting both Jai Yahom and Har Har Mahadev, attacking Hindu Bengali settlements. Right? So, Northeast tensions are not just religious. This is a very Hindi heartland thing, Hindu Muslim. In the Northeast, it's one tribe versus the other, tribal versus local. Around time I first came into Shillong, January 81, situation was quite taut here also, because there was a Dakar movement. Outsiders were beaten up sometimes. So these things took a long time settling down. So what is settling down? should not be stirred. Nobody will gain from it.
I think somebody was asking a few questions, so we'd like to. Would you like to
Sure,
interact?
sure,
That'll be
sure,
more interesting. Somebody
sure.
would probably like to share a thought or two. We have somebody with a microphone, although it's quite boring just me asking away to glory. So thank you, Mr. Rao, our former Chief Secretary. Nice to see you here, sir. Anyway, since nobody wants to,
No, he has a question. He has a
oh,
question.
Check. Okay. Hi, Shekhar. I am a very avid fan of yours. I watch CTC daily, and I'm looking forward to today's CTC on Meghalaya's development with the TMC. My question to you and to Ba David is, sometime during the height of the pandemic, I think, Ba David, I think you had conducted an interview or you were giving a statement somewhere, and you had sort of mentioned that you would rather see COVID positive patients' names being displayed, and that is, I feel, I am a psychologist by training, so, and that is, in terms of confidentiality, patient confidentiality, that was one thing which I had a bit of a problem with. Um, so my question would be, in terms of sensitivity and sensitivity of reporting. So how do you train journalists to do that? And Shekhar sir, how do you sort of give this kind of training to your reporters at the print?
I think, see, I didn't really say you should. I said at one point of time there was a lot of reluctance to name. As per se, then it became a little bit during the initial stages of HIV when people, there was a lot of taboo and there was a lot of misconcepts. My suggestion was, my thoughts rather, was that if somebody was willing to declare their status, why do you have to hide it? Somebody is actually coming on camera and saying, look, it's happened to me, and this is what happened because I did this or whatever. So I said that would go a long way in sensitizing people because COVID was so dynamic, we didn't even know what hit us. We didn't even know what it was. So I said the more we learn from each other and more than hide facts, if we are more transparent, then we can get a grip of things. That was what I meant.
Second, I think most people who come into journalism, they are smart people. In fact, they have too much political correctness. So we, if anything, try and cure them of political correctness. Uh, and these days, young people are very conscious of identity issues, identity, gender. They are very conscious. So that is not such a sweat. Uh, the rest is the basic principles of journalism remain the same. That what you publish should be in public interest, should be of public interest. Of public interest means people should want to know why this happened. Three, it should be fair, and it should be accurate, and it should be fair in the sense that both sides should be given a chance to give their version. So I think that is something, and the essential principle there is you should not be afraid to lose a story. No story is too good to be fact checked out. Only tabloids do that. There was a famous or infamous editor of New York Post, I think, which is a terrible tabloid, who said in his farewell speech, "Never fact check your way out of a good story." So, a reasonable newsroom's principle is always fact check. Some stories can be too good to be true.
Yeah, well, for instance, coming to the latest, it was too good to be true when initially it was rumored that Dr. Mukul would be joining the TMC, but
Well, too good to be true in the sense that a lot of people. I mean, I'll give you a non-political example. When COVID started in China and picked up in Europe and America, then a feeling grew that, oh, because India is a hot country, this will not happen in a hot country. So that was too good to be true. But a lot of people bought into it, but we didn't have data. Similarly, then data wasn't there, but a lot of people, including some of our epidemiologists, started writing and saying, oh, we Indians have innate immunity, so this will not hit us. But see, this virus doesn't respect anybody, and this virus really loves to punish arrogance. And this virus is truly secular. It hits every religion equally, but it loves religion because religion means congregation, right? So it hit people who went to pilgrimage, a Hindu pilgrimage. It hit people who went to Muslim pilgrimage. It hit people who went to church gatherings, starting with that South Korean church, and then all of American Bible Belt is now suffering. So you have to have great humility with the virus. So that's where we said that all of us had some wishful thinking or the other. Hot weather, monsoon will come. We Indians are exposed to bugs. We've had BCG vaccine, right? These were all wrong presumptions.
Uh, we're talking about COVID. We have a little time left only. Do you feel that the way we have handled COVID so far has been able to establish that we are able to deal with something
Well,
so rapid?
the day we arrive at that conclusion, the third wave will happen. Uh, so I think just keep your humility and your masks on, and follow the basic principles. Follow the basic principles, and let us see what happens. Maybe we'll all get boosters in the next 6 months. Uh, Maybe not, but I think just be very humble. Uh, uh, sir, that's the microphone.
Thank you. According to you, sir, the successes and the failures of the present government in Delhi, the Modi government.
Well, I think you don't want me to get started because then not only will the rest of your lit fest be over, but I'll miss my flight, and you might have bad guys visit you after I have left, right? So you don't want that. Maybe some other time I'll talk about it.
On a lighter note, Shekhar, what do you feel are the key takeaways? Your brief return to Shillong, Meghalaya, whatever you. I'm sure you must have done a little bit of study just before coming. How are we doing? How are we
Well,
faring now?
I will just, I will tell you my wish. My wish is that more and more of young people from the Northeast, particularly the tribal states, should now come to other big cities and work because big cities are waiting for them. Big cities are all service economies. Uh, there's a tremendous need for skilled people. So please don't be shy. Come to the big cities. They'll welcome you. If there's an odd incident, you have enough solidarity right now. Don't let that discourage you. So please do come because if the I mean, it's the same thing. Prophet comes to the mountain, or mountain goes to the prophet, right? So you come to Delhi, Pune, Mumbai, Bangalore, and people will then know. People will then learn the difference between Khasi and Jaintia and Garo. Uh, and then if I take 15 minutes describing what High New tradition is, uh, 500,000 people will not need to watch because maybe they'll know, right? Because all this remains exotic as long as people are not familiar with. Because once people are interacting, then people become more open.
So much, Shekhar. It was wonderful.
There's one hand for a long time in the back.
Oh, okay.
That's because you have the smartest shades.
Thanks, Shekhar. I'm a big fan as usual. Um, so my question is little complicated. I'm Raj Kamal. I'm a conservation scientist, and I look at biodiversity, the way forests are declining in the northeast. And you spoke about how the conflict and the different kind of disturbances are settling, and that's a good news. I mean, peace is good for everything. But what we have seen in Northeast, and I've done a lot of analysis on that, that peace hasn't been particularly kind to the biodiversity and the forest here. Because since peace arrived from late 90s onwards, you also see a lot of industrialization, a lot of mining, a lot of destruction of biodiversity happening at the same scale what you see in the rest of the country. And it's a conundrum. I would like to hear your comments on that.
Well, first of all, generally, I mean, if my regular listeners and readers hear this, they'll say I'm contradicting myself. Uh, but my principle is very simple. There is no contradiction between growth and environmental concerns. So, economy should grow in the Northeast, but should grow in the Northeast in a way that is most profitable for the Northeast and least damaging for the Northeast, which means the most profit, the most benefit at the lowest cost. So, the benefit is what will produce the most number of jobs, and cost is what will cause the least damage to ecology, and maybe what is it that will develop a vested interest in preserving ecology. And when I look at the Northeast, the only things the Northeast has to leverage in this manner is culture and tourism. Uh, I mean, I find it heartbreaking, and I've written about it that there are these steel foundries in Meghalaya. There should be no steel foundries in Meghalaya, right? There should be no cement made in Meghalaya. Uh, I don't know what the economics and ecology of coal mining is, but which coal can be so vital? India has so much coal. All the world has so much coal. At this point, coal is in fashion, but it's a 6 month phenomenon, right? If Meghalaya has an economic cost for mining this coal, and that coal is then burnt in these factories, which provide a few hundred jobs, no more, right? Maybe Meghalaya should negotiate with the center and get itself compensated in a way that this revenue loss does not take place. And these are states, your natural wealth is your ecology. Your natural wealth is not stores of gold or platinum. This is not South Africa. Uh, so if you don't preserve that, then the loss will be too much. And a few more factories, few more power consuming factories in the northeast or smoke spewing factories in the northeast will do nothing.
One last one then.
Hello, Sekhar sir. As usual, a big fan, regular watcher of Kadi Klata. I am a student of Nehu. So, you have mentioned about the influence of Assam over the rest of the sister states. Is it because of a CM who has the power to persuade, coax, and even in some instance, strong arm leaders? Will Assam lose its influence over the other northeastern states if some other coalition governments comes up in the next election, or is it here to stay? The influence of Assam.
Well, I think all of us have to learn from history. Uh, it was all one state of Assam. Shillong used to be the capital of all of the Northeast.
Undivided.
How did so many states come up? So many states came up because they did not want to be just extensions of Assam. Each state had a sense of identity. So if you again try to homogenize it, there will be an immune reaction. Some people will break out in rashes. So I think you have to see Warrior Elvin. I'm sure you are at Nehu, you should be familiar with the name. So Warrior Elvin wrote philosophy for NEFA and did a lot of writing on the Northeast, and he was Nehru's advisor in many ways. So he had a concept called hastening slowly. So in diverse regions, you have to hasten change slowly, which means you have to let people do it. You don't have to bring it down on them saying, hey, you fellows, you have no idea, the world has moved on, come, 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 you are missing the bus. Not like that. People will find the bus. People are smart. You have to make the bus available to them. Every now and then, Delhi gets this disease that we can go and we can fast forward change here, there, somewhere. You cannot fast forward these things.
More of a push and nudge. Thank you very much, Mr. Shekhar Gupta. It was wonderful having you back at the Wards Lake in Shillong.
Thank you very much. And David, thanks for being here. You know, the best thing about small states means you send two MPs or three MPs? Two MPs,
One
right?
Rajya Sabha 3.
Yeah, two MPs in Lok Sabha. That is two out of 543, right? How much do you count for? Uh, but the strength that the Northeast has is that every state, every state has its local journalists and media. So this year, Editors Guild of India has 2 members on the Press Council of India. And one of those members is the editor of a paper in Manipur called Huyen Lampao. Now, if the Manipuri Methi here, they'll tell you the meaning of Huyen Lampao. Pao is news, Lam is war, Hui and N, one is chicken, one is lion, right? So the news of the war between lion and the tiger, and you know in that situation who's seen as the lion and who's seen as the tiger and who's seen as the chicken. Certainly, the local rebels are not seen as the chicken. So this is the strength. Patricia is not here. No, she's somebody that all of India's journalism is proud of, because she's sitting here and she's speaking her mind and she's exposed to the elements that I'm not exposed to. I can shoot and scoot, but she can't. So this is the big strength in the Northeast. Now I see a lot of the digital organizations are coming up, so that's a very good thing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Shekhar Gupta and Mr. David Laiplang, for such an enlightening talk. We have a gift for both of you, the 2 new release books by Kinpam Singh Nongkanri and Daribha Lindam.